Hi, we're here today for Around the Sycamore Tree. So first we're going to start with the introductions. My name is Kristen Kelly and I'm a freshman here at Indiana State. I play softball and I'm studying athletic training in the applied medicine and rehab concentration. I'm minoring in business and massage therapy and getting a certificate in medical sales.
My name is Madison Bannock. I'm a freshman here at ISU also. I'm studying to become an athletic trainer and then further my education to become a physical therapist.
I'm Caitlin. I'm a freshman here at ISU as well, and I'm going to be majoring in exercise science and minoring in massage therapy.
Okay, great. Now that we have all introduced each other, we're going to get started with the questions in terms of the overuse articles. So, girls, what's your interpretation of an overuse injury, and then how does this differentiate from society's interpretation of overuse?
My definition of overuse is basically hurting yourself or having the same injury over and over again and then just not doing anything about it. That's basically my definition.
I'd say the same thing, just you hurt yourself, you overexert yourself, and you don't really do much to help with the problem.
Yeah, I think those are both great. I think that overuse is like something that occurs over time. So, excuse me, you like it builds up until it gets really bad, I believe is what like an overuse injury is. You guys both agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question I have, has either of you experienced an over injury use before?
I have. I played softball in high school for 4 years, and all 4 years I was a catcher. And so I kind of caught up with me over the years, and I have really bad knees now. And just squatting and doing the position of the catcher, it's really hard on the knees. So it's not fun.
I say I would have all throughout high school and all my life. I played soccer, and I would mess up my ankles all the time. So every now and then, uh, I'd have really bad ankles. And
Yeah, I definitely can agree to that. I played softball throughout my whole life, and I play it here too, as I said. In high school, I would have really bad, like my elbow would hurt really bad from throwing. I think my throw was wrong, so it like gradually hurt. Yeah. How do you guys think overuse is caused?
I think overuse is caused is just by doing the same injury and not doing anything about it. Like you just keep hurting it and you're just causing it more pain.
yeah, I'd say I agree with that as well. I think it has to do with overworking yourself and possibly just not doing what you're doing the right way. Like you're exercising wrong, and that just affects your whole body, and that can cause an injury.
Yeah, Caitlin, I totally agree with that. I think when people do things the wrong way for a long period of time is when we're starting to see like these overuse injuries, or like in college, I'm sure we see it a lot. Just like, especially like, for example, a like baseball pitcher, um, their arms, I'm sure, are getting overuse injuries. So, next question, do you guys think rest plays a factor in this overuse injury?
I think rest does really play a factor because if you're constantly hurting yourself over and over again, you're not giving the injury any time to like heal or recover from it. It's just rest is a big deal, and like people really hone in on it. Like you need to rest and build up your strength.
Yeah, I would say rest is a really big deal when you're trying to recover. If you keep going at it and just ignoring the problem, it'll just continue to get worse, possibly to the point where you can't play the sport or exercise.
Yeah, I would totally agree with both of you. I think that rest is important, and I think that in college it is really important to get that off day. So as an athlete, I really appreciate that off day. We in the articles they mention like pediatric overuse injuries. How do you think the pediatric overuse injuries affects you later in life and like as an athlete later in your career?
I think playing a sport at such a young age is it's great to experience a kid to it, but if they keep making those injuries as they're playing and they don't change as they get older, that injury is just going to become more severe. And if you're a kid, you don't really know better. But if you keep doing it, it's just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah, I would agree. Children, it's good for them to play sports to learn good skills of uh, like learning how to work with other people. But if they get hurt continually, then it's not good, and it'll eventually just carry on as they get older, and it gets worse and worse, and that's just not good for them.
For sure, for sure. I think that if it does not get treated, then it can definitely get worse. And if it keeps getting worse, I don't know how they get better. Um, so, what are different ways that we could prevent overuse? We said rest, but what are other ways that we think we can like prevent this injury?
There's this acronym that is called RICE. It stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. And that's really good when you're trying to recover from an injury.
Like Caitlin said, that is really good. Rest is the biggest thing, and always ice to keep the swelling down and inflammation. Um, Always elevate it and um, compress it at all times.
And when you're elevating it, you should always have it above your heart.
Yeah, I definitely agree. How often do you guys think we should be like telling our athletes or our kids like to do this like rice? Do you think it's only when things hurt, or do you guys think when it should be like after every game or after every practice? Like, how often do you think they should be doing these things?
I honestly think they should do it every like day or after every practice, maybe even more after a game because um, you just don't want to let that injury progress and hopefully stop it before it gets even worse.
Yeah, I agree. And especially, like we said before, rest is a really big deal from trying to prevent an injury or make an injury worse.
So what do you guys think happens when we continue like these overuse injuries? What do you think happens?
Can you repeat yourself?
Um, oh, I apologize. I repeated that question. What population do you think is the most susceptible to these common overuse injuries?
I'd say athletes around our age, people who are teenagers and young adults, they don't really understand the how much of an injury can affect them and how it will affect them later on. They're just like, okay, I want to play the game. Who cares about this injury? I want to win for the team.
I agree with you too, Caitlin. Also, kids younger than us too, because um, some high schools are really hard, and all it is just about winning. And they think if I tell the coach we're gonna lose. So I think we really need to focus on how our athletes are and how they're feeling.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the population that is most susceptible to this is like college athletes because they've been playing since they were like 6 years old in kindergarten. So they played through elementary school, through middle school, through high school, and now they're in college. And they obviously had to work hard to get to where they are now. And when you practice as a college athlete, you're practicing every day and you really don't get it like off season. So I think the most injuries that are going to come is from college athletes for sure. So in terms of athletes, when do you guys think it's okay to clear them to like go back into the games? Like as future athletic trainers or like physical therapists, when you see these overuse injuries, when should we send them back?
I would say when they don't feel any pain or you can tell that they don't see any pain. We really need to pay attention to them and make sure we're not sending them back early by like doing tests and stuff. I think that would really help.
Yeah, I would say that, and just watching their progression of their healing and seeing their progress. If like one day it's really bad, but then after a while the pain goes away, and I think it's
So in the article that we were provided, it talks about how there's a difference in male and female like overuse injuries. And I saw that females are more likely to like report their overuse injuries. But I didn't know if you guys had any other like commentary or anything to add on that.
I do think girls are more likely to like tell their coach that they're hurting, not just to say that they're like weaker than boys, but because boys, they have their pride in their game. So they're kind of like, if I tell the coach that I can't play or I can't pitch, we're going to lose this game and it's all going to be on me. But I mean, you got to be knowing when to take the player out.
Yeah, there's a stigma when it comes to guys and admitting that they're hurt. They're like, oh, if I'm hurt and I go and tell someone about it, they'll think I'm just a baby and I'm just overreacting and nothing's really wrong with me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the boys having stigmas. I think that they don't want other people to think that they're weak and reporting an injury just an overuse when there's not actually like physically wrong, like they don't have a cut on them, that's not that thing's broken. I think that's a sign. They take it as they're weak. So why don't you think athletes report these overuse injuries, especially in males? So
Like I said earlier, they don't want to lose the game for their team. They don't want to disappoint their parents, their friends, their coach. It's like maybe if they're expecting colleges to look at them, they don't want them to think, oh, I'm going to be hurt all the time. Just
Yeah, and especially when someone's going to college, they have a scholarship because they play a sport. If they say they're hurt, they could easily lose their scholarship and lose their money for education if the injury's bad enough.
I totally agree with you, Caitlin. I think that the scholarship thing definitely has a role in it when they're getting like free education or reduced price for education because of the sport they play. I feel like they're scared they're going to lose the rest of their future because of this overuse injury. In the article, there was like a breakdown of all the different sports. What sports do you guys think has the most in like overuse injuries?
Before reading this, I would think football is, considering with how much contact it is, how brutal they hit each other and with force. But after reading, I realized that it's swimming because when they're working out and swimming, they use their whole body to work out, be able to do what they need to do.
really any sport you can be susceptible to injuries, but like it also depends on the position you play. Like a catcher, you're constantly bending your knees, you're putting all that pressure on your knees. And like Caitlin said, I would have thought football would have been one of the higher, but then I realized swimming is, and it's really interesting.
I totally agree with everyone, like, or every sport being susceptible to these overuse injuries. Um, I would have thought like baseball or not necessarily softball, but especially baseball, because we see a lot of pitchers, especially like the Tommy John, because they are constantly throwing overhand, and that is not like a natural motion to be made. So I thought before I read the article that baseball was going to be the highest, but I saw it wasn't it swimming? Yeah. So that was really interesting to me, but it makes sense because they're also doing the same motion as well, but they're doing it even more than like baseball would. Um, So that kind of leads into like which part of the body do you think gets overused the most and why do you think like that part of the body gets overused?
Well, if we're talking about swimming, shoulders especially, you're putting a lot of force on your shoulders, and then like also knees. Like like if you're jumping or you're running, you're constantly putting all that pressure on your knees, and it's just asking for more injuries.
Yeah, I would say depending on what sport you play and what position you play, the injury that is on your body is different. Like with um, uh, a person who jumps, for example, would be the knees, but with a catcher or a pitcher, no, catcher, it's their shoulder. So depending on what it is, what sport it is, the injury would always be different.
I totally agree with that one. Um, so how do we think that we can integrate and relate these like overuse injuries that we're talking about today to care and prevention of our Yes, how can we integrate care and prevention to our athletes and help them understand what's going on?
We could inform them the importance of rest and tell them how, if you don't take care of your body, what will happen to it in the future, and how the benefit of taking care of yourself will be better in the long run, not just for you, but for the whole team and just.
Definitely taking care of yourself is the big thing. I think if we were to inform our athletes about like the consequences, if you keep doing this same injury, if you keep hurting it, depending on what kind of injury it is, if it's your knees, you could end up getting a knee replacement in the future or just surgeries. I mean, nobody wants to go through that. And I think if we really tell them like you need to tell us if you are hurt so we can get this injury taken care of is a big like deal.
I totally agree. I think that athletes don't really understand when like they've been playing it their whole life that this can happen. And I think that them understanding like, hey, let's take care of this now rather than seeing all the effects later will help them to like comprehend like the importance of this. Um, in terms of athletes as well, do you guys think that overuse injuries occur more in athletes who play multiple sports, or do you think they occur more in athletes who are just focused on one sport?
I would say athletes who play more than one sport because in one sport they could get overuse injury with their knee, but then they go and play another sport that uses their upper extremities, and then they can get another injury with their wrist or their shoulder. And most sports they run, so they'd also be hurting and making the other injury worse.
I'm gonna go on the opposite side of that. If you're playing in the same sport and say you're pitching, for example, you're constantly throwing, you're constantly using those same muscles and the same motion. You're not gonna hurt as much in your body, but you're gonna keep hurting that same injury.
I think I'm going to agree with Madison on this one, especially in like high school. Um, like kids who play like football and then they go to basketball and then they go to baseball. I think that it helps, like for a pitcher example, playing football and playing basketball are totally different motions of the arm. So you aren't necessarily resting it, but you're using like different parts, if that makes sense. So, well, that is all the questions that I have for you guys today. Do you have any other comments on the overuse injuries or anything to add?
I'd just say, after hearing what you guys had to say, I guess I would agree with the people who play the sport. One sport would affect the injury more. But other than that, I don't really have anything else to say.
I just think we need to inform our athletes of the consequences if they don't tell us if they're injured. It will save them a lot of pain and like a lot of money in the long run.
Yeah, as an athlete, I can now, reading the articles, I can not appreciate, but understand overuse injuries a little bit more. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. We hope you have a great day, and I hope you got something out of this and understanding overuse.